Dear viewers, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new episode of your program, Spectrum. Immigration, leaving your country of origin and moving to a new adoptive country, was, still is, and definitely will always be a dream for millions of people. Many people will resort to immigration, escaping from atrocities, from wars, from economic problems. They might seek asylum due to oppression for political reasons or religious reasons as well. Others might resort to immigration, hoping for a better future in a better country. Although we have millions of immigrants every year that go to all different, immigrant receiving countries, the outcome of the immigration process widely varies between one immigrant and another. So what are the factors that will determine to what extent will your process be successful or, unfortunately, unsuccessful? To delve deeper into the crypts of immigration, I'm really delighted to be accompanied by Iyad Al-Basha, who is an expert immigration consultant. Mr. Iyad, hello and welcome to the program. It's a real pleasure having you with us today.
Hello, and thank you for having me. And I'm delighted to be with you on the show today.
It's a real pleasure. And to start off, let's start with maybe one very important factor that many people might talk about, which is the difference of culture. To what extent would the difference of culture of one immigrant versus another play a role in his success in his new adoptive country? So if an immigrant comes from a country with similar norms, traditions, and culture to his adoptive country versus another one who comes from a country that has an entirely different set of norms, traditions, and customs, to what extent does this play a role in their success in their new adoptive country?
Yeah, well, maybe within Canada, because it's a multicultural country, there will be no effect at all for the culture. It's the adaptability. Canada is very welcoming country with multiculture, and it accepts all cultures within the Canada. But people who are coming from outside, sometimes they are not accustomed to live in multicultural society, and their adaptability would differ from country to country. And that could be one of the reasons some people would be successful in Canada and others won't.
Oh, so you say actually it might be contrary to what we might think. It's not the lack of welcome to their culture, but actually it's because it's too welcoming, because Canada is very welcoming to all different cultures. So if somebody has an ethnocentric way of thinking, he's only centered in his ethnic background and is not open to dealing with different cultures, in a multicultural society like Canada, they are the ones who will have difficulty. But
Exactly.
no matter what your cultural background is, as long as you're able to communicate with others and welcome others and understand others, then you will not have a problem. Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, yeah, completely.
And the second factor would be the socioeconomic class. So to what extent will your socioeconomic background affect your success in your new country? So if you come from a very high socioeconomic class in your country of origin versus coming from maybe a middle class or like less.
Mhm. Yeah, the definition is different in Canada and many other countries. For instance, what is skilled and semi-skilled, non-skilled people? In Canada, like a technician is considered skilled, like a plumber, whereas in many other countries is considered non-skilled. And mapping that differences could be challenging to many people coming from different countries. And not all countries. So some countries have the same setup like Canada, but majority of countries they don't have that setup. They don't um, consider people who are like plumbers, technicians, electricians to be equal in the same class as engineers, like what's happening in Canada. And that is the only challenge, and I consider is mapping these classes from different countries to Canada.
So you think in other countries people might have different perceptions regarding um, specific professions. So they might think that if you are doing any kind of manual work, then you might be considered less than anybody who is doing some kind of like what we call white collar work. So, like white collar people, people who are sitting in offices, might be considered to be of a higher class and of a higher genre of people compared to blue collar people, people who are working with their hands, people working in factories or like doing manual work like in plumbing or welding and so on. So this will make a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. Like the definition of like if you go to Middle East, like people who are butchers, plumbers, and all of that, like the technicians, people who fix the radio, your radio, these are considered like labor level. Whereas in Canada, the truck driver and the butcher and the plumber are considered middle class or same as a graduate. And the definition of a lower class is totally different than many other countries. It could be, and that is the challenge. Actually, that's the challenge when you're coming to Canada is the understanding the different classes in Canada than other countries, and how to adapt to this different setup.
And would you share with our audience here, like what would be the definition of a lower class in Canada
Mm.
versus other countries?
Yeah, usually general labor, clerks, the helpers. We like any technician, like the electrician, they have a technician helper. Like mechanic, there's a helper. The helper are the people who have no education and basically little experience, because within experience they can become and probably certification if it requires, but it is mainly experience. They become electricians, they can become butchers, but the helper is the person who has none. He has no experience or anything. They just started in this profession, and usually these are the low class or the lower category in definition of classes. And it could be the same in every country that people who are educated are considered high class. Business owners are the high
Mhm.
class, the
Mhm.
top class. It's the same in Canada, but the definition of the semi and semi-skilled and non-skilled is the difference between different countries and especially Canada and different other countries.
Yeah. So two other questions here, I think follow-up questions to maybe clarify the
Mhm.
picture to other people. Uh, Socioeconomic mobility, like your ability to move up the socioeconomic ladder in Canada versus your ability to move up the socioeconomic ladder in other countries. Do you think it's the same? Is Canada easier? Is it more difficult to move up the socioeconomic ladder if you're a hard worker?
I think Canada is easier. It's much easier, and basically, if we look at the system, the Canadian system of the career definition and the national occupation classification, um, there is a clear path, defined clear path to move up in the ladder. And if you look at that and you understand that path, it will be a normal journey for you. It's not just you have to fight your way up. I'll give you an
Okay.
example. For
Yeah, go ahead.
instance,
Go ahead.
like a person who come to Canada as with no experience or anything, he would be an assistant or a helper. And if he's a helper to a painter, then after a while he can become a professional painter. And the normal growth of a professional painter is a supervisor, and that is gained by years of experience. Some professions, if it's a technician, it needs to take a license, which is a normal. If you have that experience, you can pass the exam of and get the license. Majority of the profession does not require a license, so it is a helper, then the profession, then a supervisor, and that is a very normal growth.
Another thing again is the percentage of middle class in Canada versus other countries. And please correct me if I'm wrong. The last time I checked, I would know that middle class in Canada is about 70% of the population. Um, like, I don't know how accurate is this figure, but you might know maybe more. But how is this figure compared to other countries in the world? Like the percentage of, and and again, um, the style of life of a middle class citizen. So, a middle class citizen in Canada, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is a person who owns who everything. He owns something of everything. So he's not somebody who's deprived of anything. He doesn't have the maximum,
Mhm.
but he owns something of everything. So he owns a decent place to stay in. He owns a decent mode of transportation. His children go to decent education, and he can spend a decent vacation. He wears decent clothes. He eats decent food. Not the best, but he can afford to have a decent amount, a reasonable amount of everything in life.
Yeah, I
Am I
completely
correct in
agree.
my definition? Am I correct?
Yeah, I completely agree. That's the middle class. That the person he doesn't feel deprived. He's capable to have something of everything. Like if he wants to buy a car, he can buy a car. If he wants to buy clothing, he can. If he wants to put his kids in educational system, he can. That is the middle class, and the people below that are the lower class who have these hopes to be at least can do anything when they decide to. Yeah, I completely agree. And
So
Canada is as you said, it's the 70% is very high percentage because in most countries it's usually a very small percentage, and the majority of the people are the low class, and that's the difference in Canada.
absolutely. In many
Mhm,
countries, the middle class is defined in a very awkward manner, actually. So
mhm,
most people defined as middle class in many countries around the world are actually lower class. Because in many countries around the world, if you want to live in a decent house, not any house, you must be over the middle class. Middle class cannot afford to live in a decent house, cannot afford to have a decent car, cannot afford
mhm,
to send their children to decent education, cannot afford to have decent medical care. They can
mhm.
have, yes, medical care, education, they can have transportation, they can have a place of living, but not decent in any way. So
Exactly.
so so again, how does this affect you as an immigrant? If you were somebody from the very select lucky few in a country, and you consider yourself to be an upper class citizen in that country, and then you come here to Canada to find yourself like at least 70% of the people.
Mhm.
How will that affect some immigrants? Would that be okay for them? From your experience with a lot of immigrants, does that affect some people?
Yeah, it's like a shock. Like if you come with you thinking that you are from the upper class, you bought a house, and next day you find your neighbor is a truck driver, is a garbage truck driver, and he owns a house like you, and it will be like a shock because you were in the elite, or you could consider you because it's a very small percentage in most countries, the middle class. You could consider it as elite class as well. You are from elite class and you find yourself the house can be bought from a person who was a truck driver or a technician, maybe the garage technician that you fix your car. He owns a house also. He could be your neighbor, and he was able to buy a house as well. Yeah, that is a shock to everyone, and especially both who are come from the lower class and they find themselves like he's coming to Canada as a butcher, and he find himself he is in this class. He can buy a house, he could buy a decent car, decent clothing, and he shouldn't look like somebody from like he used to be in coming from his country.
He is a human. Like
He's
simply everybody in Canada here is a human.
mm,
And
exactly.
this unfortunately, and might be a shock to some people, unfortunately. And another factor would be age. To what extent does age play a role in your success? The age of your arrival, the age at the time of your arrival to Canada or to any adoptive country. If you come as a child, if you come in your, adolescence years, if you come after graduation, or if you come later on, to what extent
Yeah.
does this play a role in your success?
Usually, people coming at working age from 21 to 39 are the most fortunate to be able to integrate and hence become successful. But if you come like less than age without guidance, like it will be very challenging. If it is with guidance, then it will be acceptable and you will have high percentage of success. But people who come like above that age, it will be very, very challenging. It won't be not easy for a person who are like in their 40s to work as a in the Canadian system. It will be challenging for them to understand the Canadian system because there is a career definition in Canadian system who is new graduate, internship, professional, senior, and so on, and manager, and people who would come above that age, they cannot adapt to this system easily, and usually will suffer a lot. And that's why we advise people who planning to come above 40, age of 40, to be prepared to these challenges because will be a real challenge.
Now we come to another factor that might be also related to socioeconomic and so on and so forth, which is your level of education. So, to what extent, again, does your level of education affect your ability to succeed in your new adoptive country?
If we try to link the level of education to the Canadian occupation list, it could be one point, and the other point, if the education happened in Canada or happened outside Canada, it's another point. So if we think about what does it mean to study in Canada, mostly people who study in Canada, they study and work. So while they're studying, they usually experience the the idea of finding a job, search for a job, what is an interview, and all that while they're studying, and they become very ready to become to become part of the job force in Canada by graduating. They are just ready. So, and that's people who study in Canada are more luckily they have better chances to integrate and succeed because they understand the Canadian system, the interviews, and all that stuff in Canada. Whereas people who graduate with the same level of study or education will face more challenges because the lack of understanding. This is one point. The other point is in Canada, the Canadian system is a little bit different than other countries. Like you don't need to study for years for all type of education. Like engineers is normal to study 3 to 5 years, but many other occupation 2 to 3 years is enough to practice to start working in the field. For instance, accountant. It could be a graduate or a diploma is the same level in Canada, but in other countries they need to study more years than in Canada and basically when they come here they will feel they are more educated but still they are not more experienced to the Canadian job system or job search process itself.
Yeah, because I think again, it's not only the level of your education, it's the style of your education as well. So, like on paper, you might have a higher level of education compared to somebody else here living in Canada, but your style of education is very different. Am I right about
Mm.
that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Style education is very, very different. And even if you go to people who studied in schools in Canada, they are easily can go into universities because the school prepare them for different things like, for instance, how to create a project and how to do presentation. They all study all that and research. They study all that while they're in school. And it's normal to go to a university and the first year they do the same thing, projects, research, and all that stuff. But other countries they don't have that. So the style is a huge is a big difference between Canada education system and many other countries. And the relationship between work and study is very connected in Canada. Is different than other countries. Yeah, so the style is a factor, and also the point is different work require different education. Like vocational education is different than normal education. People who want to become a cook or a plumber, they go at a different, probably high school and different both secondary school as well.
So yeah, like and most jobs here in Canada are regulated jobs. So there's specific
Mm.
regulations that you must follow. You must be a member of some kind of association or organization, and you need to have a license. You need to renew your license. There are requirements and prerequisites, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like most of the fields are not just open to any person passing by.
Yeah, yeah. If you like link these two countries, like country like Pakistan, their CPA is equivalent to Canadian CPA, and regulation is independent bodies. They define their requirements and they build probably Canadian relationship with other countries into that system. So you find it's easier for people coming from different countries to get their certification or licensing into Canada, and some people would suffer, like people who come with a pharmacy degree from other countries to Canada. Most is not the same as people who studied pharmacy in Canada. So the people who study in Canada, it becomes very easy for them to be licensed uh, immediately, while others probably they spend 2 to 3 years before they become a licensed pharmacist.
Yeah, so that's again the nature and style of education plays a major role. Are
Exactly.
there any other factors that might affect the success of an immigrant. And here, if we talk about the personality traits, your kind of personality, who would be an ideal immigrant? What kind of personality traits should be found in a successful immigrant? What kind of character should that immigrant have? And what kind of behaviors should he refrain from? What kind of personality traits would be considered negative for a new immigrant to succeed in his new adoptive country?
Yeah. So the most challenging jobs for people who immigrating to Canada will be is physicians and lawyers, because the Canadian system is totally different than, because it's first it's local, and the selection or the process is built for people like who study in Canada, basically. So if you're coming with a degree in law or a degree in medicine, and you want to come to Canada with your experience, you find very difficult to get the license, and probably you have to study more than what you have done in the before coming to Canada. These are the most two challenging professions in Canada.
But my question is, I'm sorry, maybe I need to rephrase my question. I'm talking
Yeah,
about
go ahead.
kind of personality. What
Personality.
things
Okay.
should be like, should they be patient? Should they be perseverance? Should be like, what kind of personality traits, what kind of
Um,
manners should the immigrant have to succeed in his new adoptive country?
yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. Yeah. Well, Canada is requires people to be patient and understanding to others. And like if you are coming from background that you are pushy and try to cut time, doesn't work. Doesn't work at all. You need to understand that if somebody in front of you is asking a question to a different person, it could take you probably 15 to 20 minutes waiting time before you go and ask the question to that person. And that is challenging for people coming from different cultures who are probably pushy. They like to come close to other people and to discuss points. Yeah, and that could be very challenging at personal level.
So, so you think something like, again, adaptability and resilience, these are important things. So you should be adaptable. You shouldn't be just like hardwired. You're like, it's my way or highway. You would never accept any kind of change to your, you know, uh, disposition to your style of life. So, because like you said, again, somebody might be used to getting all his demands fulfilled right away. But
Hmm.
here, no, like because everybody is respected equally. In some countries, if you have enough money, you can always get the first place. So the more you pay, the more you can always buy your way out, or you can
Hmm.
always be in the first place with the money. But here in Canada, no matter how rich or poor you are, you will still stand in line and you'll still have to wait for your turn. So
Yeah,
adaptability is important, definitely, and resilience. You're like, again, you should be resilient. Like you said, you should take some time. Like you gave, for example, like a pharmacist or a physician, like many other professions, you might need more time to work to upgrade yourself and
yeah,
not have this arrogance in you, like I'm this and that. Well, that was before coming here. But here, you're just simply human, period.
exactly. And another thing is people who come to Canada, they will notice that change is normal. Like I have seen people who studied probably engineering, and they become very, very famous in design, to the point that extremely famous is not just famous because they changed, and when they change, they became very successful in that change while they after they changed. So change is normal in Canada, and the ability to achieve what you want is possible, as we discussed, because the system opens that to people and provide them with whatever they want to achieve their goal. If they want education, through education; if they want through consultancy, they get that through support by investors, through support by the community, the government. They can get that as well. So there is a possibility of achieving whatever you want in Canada within the Canadian system.
And if you look at the most respected professions here in Canada, again, some of the names of the most top, if we talk about like the top five most respected professions here, like some of them are unheard of in other countries. Like on the very, very top every year, like there's like the exchange places every year. But always, always on the very, very top are people like firefighters, paramedics, nurses, farmers. They would come at the very end of the ladder in many, many countries around the world. Um, and this idea of superiority of one job over the other. So a physician is the master of the nurse, not in Canada. No,
Mhm.
the nurse would stand head to head, shoulder to shoulder with the doctor, and sometimes she's even higher than him.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so you cannot look down upon like somebody who's uh, cleaning the street. You would never look at them down with disdain. No, they like no matter who you are, like this um, person who cleans the street would stand head to head and shoulder to shoulder with the prime minister. They would not
Mhm.
be afraid of like, and then when they see the prime minister, they talk to him, like head to head, like there's no difference at all. Would not be afraid, would not give extra, just talk to him as a human being. You're just simply human.
Exactly. And if you look at the so Canadian system define job classification, as you said, where you see the nurse is the same level as a doctor, and also probably people don't know that the cleaner is in the categories is usually higher than some clerks who are in the office, sitting in an office and doing paperwork, which is in many countries is considered higher than the cleaner, but in Canada is not. The cleaner is higher as a category than the clerk.
Because it's the
So
level of your production and the significance of your work. Like, for
exactly,
example, a school bus driver is a very, very respected job because
exactly.
he is driving the future of Canada.
Mhm.
If he doesn't receive the full respect that he deserves, he's responsible for the lives of the children of the future of the country. The nurse takes care of you much more than the physician. The
Mhm.
physician will come and check you up, maybe do an operation, and he's gone. But recovery, 90% of the recovery depends on how good the nurse is. Being prepared for the operation room, again, depends on how good the nursing is. So that's why a nurse is at least, and actually not even at least, like 99.9% of the surveys here in Canada, nurses are much more respected than doctors because their job is more important. It has more significance than the doctors. So these kinds of hallucinations and misconceptions that people live around the world, when they come here to Canada and to a very advanced country and they see these differences, it's a wake up call that maybe uh, too strong for some people to take.
It is a cultural shock. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
And last but not least is an immigrant, a skilled worker immigrant versus a refugee. Um, Somebody who chose to come here with their own free will and somebody who is seeking asylum or had to resort to Canada running away from oppression or like uh, ethnocide or genocide or whatnot. What are the basic differences in the mindset of um, an immigrant versus a refugee? And who will have a better chance in succeeding in Canada, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the Canadian system in defining the refugee and skilled worker, they look at the adaptability and the integration of the skilled worker. So the system is built on these two, adaptability and integration. So integration would look at the study, the job, the English language, and all that are very, very important in the process. So basically, they make sure that this qualification is needed in Canada, and most likely the person will integrate. Whereas the refugee is a legal system. Is illegal to evaluate the process if this person could be called refugee based on UN definition. So there is it's the idea of qualification is not taken care of is not looked at all. So the integration of the refugee is challenging, and the majority of refugees are pushed to non-skilled positions because the lack of language communication made them not not to choose what job they want or what jobs they qualify for. Even if a butcher must have good English. Truck driver must have good English. Even if they have the ability and the knowledge, because of the English proficiency, they will not be able to practice these positions, and they will be pushed into some specific limited number of jobs. Whereas the skilled worker, he based on his skills, based on his knowledge, based on his experience, is all taken care of through the process. And usually they come with a job, and usually they excel in Canada.
But I believe, like, even for refugees, like, do you think there will be a big difference between the second generation of a refugee versus the second generation of an immigrant? Like the children.
No, no. There won't be any difference after that because they all will go into the Canadian system and that will be taken care of. And the problem is the legal system or the system for into refugee is will not look at integration and adaptability at all. It will look at the legal more into legal or maybe political reasons for bringing these people in. So when they come based on political or legal backgrounds. And adaptability and integration will not be looked at, and there is no process for them after they come to Canada to that part will be taken care of at all. If it is taken care of, it's fully taken care of. So
So they are considered
that's
from a
why.
humanitarian perspective, period.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Humanitarian perspective and the definition of a refugee, if they are, being coming from countries of war or being oppressed for some reason in their countries, then they have the legal right to come into Canada. So that is only legal. It's not, can they, after they come to Canada, what will happen is not taken care of. Okay. That's the problem. But their children usually is been taken care of by default because that's a Canadian system provide education and medical to the public, and they will have a very good chance to make it within Canada and be successful.
I'm sorry, Abdulbash, at the end of this interview, I really have to thank you very much for this very fruitful discussion. And I think our viewers have learned a lot of very valuable information. Thank you very much for being with us. Really appreciate
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. And dear viewers, if we were to recap here, so again, we shouldn't just look at titles. We should look at the deeper meaning of every title. So we should not have the sight, but more the insight. So don't look at things at surface value. So yeah, like two people might have a BA, but what is the definition of a BA in country A versus country B? Somebody might think that they're from an upper class. But again, what is the definition of an upper class and a middle class in country A and country B? A higher job. What is the definition of a higher job? Again, so is it a job that serves people more? Or it is the job that makes more money? Or what exactly? What is exactly the definition of a higher job? So when you come to an adoptive country, you are reborn again. And in 99.9% of the cases, you leave a less advanced country and you come to a more advanced country. So definitely, as you upgrade your country, you need to upgrade yourself. If you're too proud to upgrade yourself, then unfortunately you did not make the right decision. So when you come to a new country, you must always be ready to upgrade yourself. And upgrading yourself is not only upgrading yourself financially. No, it's not only upgrading yourself academically. No, it's also upgrading yourself personally, improving your personality traits, having more humility, having more perseverance, having more adaptability. These are major, major factors to consider to be a new successful immigrant. Dear viewers, until we meet again, hope you have a very pleasant time. Thanks for watching.